Hey everybody, this is Alex Merced from Alex Merced Coder with some more stuff about TypeScript. So today we're going to talk about like a lot of the different types and just kind of show us coding it so that way you can kind of get used to the idea of how we code the different types. So first we'll start off with the basics. So if it's a number, you just call it number. So let's say let my num is a number equals 5. Okay, and that's going to work because it's a number. I'm assigning it a number. And again, once you assign a type, that's the type. And it'll error out if you try to assign anything else to that variable. Okay, so console.log my num. Yeah, not New York num, my num. Okay. And then just kind of show, because again, when I run tsc, that's going to compile it. But if I run tsnode, it should just run it and not compile it. So tsnode practice.ts. So let that do its thing. And see, it runs, but if I go to my practice.js, oh, my bad. I was typing in the wrong file. Okay. Oh, no, I was right. So see, let my num equals 5, but my practice.js doesn't reflect that. Okay, so it has a whole hello world from the first lesson because I didn't compile it. So that's the reason why you want tsnode. If you just want to run it and you want to be compiling it every single time, tsnode will let you run your TypeScript file. tsc, meaning TypeScript compiler, will let you compile your code. Okay, so it's just all these little things. Okay, so next, booleans. So let's say let my bool equal a boolean, and these are generally all lowercase, so true. Console.log. We'll do a few of these before we do the next run. My bool. Okay, how about an array? You want to declare, oh, we already did string, so let me just do string for real quick. Let my string equal hello. And it's actually kind of particular. I was trying this out earlier. It is kind of particular about using single quotes over double quotes. It was giving me some issues with that. So if you have an error, that might be the reason. So what happened is that when I put the double quotes, it sort of implied the single quotes when I tried to compile it. So in case that's a thing. So console.log my string. Nope. My string. Okay. So now we'll do the array. So let my array equal an array. And you can actually, you need to specify what's going to be in the array. Like, is it an array of numbers? Is it an array of arrays? So if you don't really want it to care what's in the array, I can just be, okay, just anything. Okay. And then in that case, I can do something like this. Okay, so 5, hello. And that's fine. But if I had put like number in there, it would say, hey, this is supposed to be an array of numbers. Why is hello in there? So you can really take that typing to a new level. And it actually can keep going. So generally, you're going to want to put any in certain situations, depending on how you're using the items, or just break up your variables and not have the really crazy complex data structures that sometimes exist in JavaScript. Cool. But then there's also the idea of a tuple. A tuple is just an array, but it's an array with a fixed number of elements. So you won't be able to push stuff off of it, or you won't be able to use pop to take stuff off of it, or shift to remove the front element. Well, pop and shift remove, push and unshift add. It's good. So basically, let's say I do this. Let my tuple equal, and then basically here, what I can do is then I just specify the types in my tuple. So we'll say I want this tuple to always be first a number, then a string. Okay, so let my tuple number string. So you're basically putting an array and saying I always want the first element to be number, second to be string, and then I could assign 5 hello. But this is going to have a fixed length. I'll never be able to add like a third item to it. That's the difference between a tuple and an array. Okay, and that way, if you know you have an array that needs to be a fixed length, you can actually do that, okay, with tuples. And again, just another way to help define things, narrow things down, so that when things behave the way, not the way you plan them, you're able to catch them early. Okay, so basically what we're doing is we're taking all that flexibility JavaScript gives us and putting some constraints on it. And that's where TypeScript really helps us. Okay, so let my tuple. Then we can also create what's called an enum. So an enum is like creating your own type. So let's say I wanted to create an enum, and we'll call this person. So it's not a class because it's not like functions and variables. It's just I'm saying, hey, I want this thing to be called. So you can define an enum any way you want. It's kind of like creating your own value type and saying these are the potential values of it. So actually I'm not going to use person. We're going to say okay, so let's say type. It's a good one. Type. Just to keep it simple, say type gender. Okay, and then what you do is you actually define what are the different possible values for gender. Okay, so we can be like male, female, non-binary. You get the idea. Okay. Okay, so now there's a data type called basically called gender. And then basically the way it treats it is it treats everything you put in the options as a number. But basically you're giving a name to the number. So this way it makes it easier to kind of assign values. So basically male 0, female 1, non-binary 2. But basically now I can be like, I can make a variable. So let's say let my gender. Okay, we're going to say it's going to be of type gender. There is going to equal male. Actually saying let it equal gender.male. And really what's going on under the hood, it's just saying that it's assigning the value of 0. And that way you can test it. So basically, but the thing is I can't do anything. Only thing I can assign to it are those 3 possible values in this case. So I could do gender male, gender female, gender non-binary. Because it's typed, it won't accept any other options. So you could add more options, you can subtract options, but this is a good way to like limit options. So let's say you wanted to like make sure no one sits there and says their age is 1,000. You could theoretically make one that's like age 1 through 100 if you want to, or make an enum for like a series of different types of cars. So you only want to make sure that they can't assign a value to it that isn't part of your data set per se. Or let's say it's a Harry Potter program and you want to make sure that only the 4 houses of Gryffindor I don't know enough about Harry Potter, but the 4 different houses can are the only option. So you can only be like a Hufflepuff or I forget the other ones. You guys get the idea. Okay. So let's just test that out. Let's compile this. Okay. Wait, this is all getting a little freezy on me. There we go. Well, let me console log that so we can see if this compiles successfully what the value of that is. So console.log my gender. Okay. Please, anyone who may take offense to me using that particular example, I don't mean to. I'm just trying to illustrate the code. Okay. Save. So let's run TS node practice. Let's see how it runs. I should have console logged my tuple, but we'll see if this runs any errors. Yes. TypeScript to the rescue, telling me that I messed up. Okay, so we got a few. So that's the first one. Okay, cannot find name binary. Yeah, I figured the dash might be a problem. So what we're going to do is we're going to rename this to non-binary. Okay. And you can find that. So we fixed that. Now, also on line 17, expected a comma. This was by expecting a comma like right there before. Yep, right between non and binary. Declaration or statement expected. Enum, gender, non-binary. Okay, so it is expecting a little bit more a declaration at that point. Okay, so what it wants me to do is take out the semicolon because it wants you to declare an enum right after you've defined the enum. So we take that out. That should fix that. But just as another cool thing that you can do, so and how you can see that this is useful. So when we console log my gender, it should print out the number 0. Okay. But what I can do then is if I were to print on the screen for like a user, I can just actually print out the name of the variable by doing something like this: console.log. Should be gender. Then because technically it's an array of those values. So, and then basically the numbers are really the index in a sense. So it's kind of like a reverse array string thing. Okay, so if I type in gender and then put my gender here, it'll actually display the name of that value. So let's see. So let's think that through. This should be a parentheses. So let's play with that. Let's save it. And let's run that again. Okay. Cool, cool, cool. That's going to run. That's going to run. That's going to run. And there we go. Okay, so basically, the 0, that's this line right here. So again, because we assigned it the value of male, which is technically the first in the array, which is 0. So then if we wanted to show that name on the screen, okay, we can be like basically gender, my gender. So this treats it as the index because it's, again, the value assigned to the enum is a numerical value. So this is essentially the value in the index, which then displays male, which is the name of the type for that thing. And it doesn't have to start at 0. Like, let's say it would be easier for you for it to start at 1. I could do this. I could do male equals 1. So then female will be 2, non-binary will be 3. So if I save that, you get the same results, except it'll print 0 instead of 1. And this is kind of useful because then now you can make a switch, okay, based on the results. So they'll, based on their answers, and create switch statements based on that, which is really neat and useful. So that's an enum. Okay, so again, you declare the enum, and you define the different titles in the enum. And again, basically those are so basically whenever I type this, only those answers will work. So if I try to do something like this, this equals 6, we're gonna have a problem. Okay, it's gonna be like, we don't recognize this number. This is not the thing. So see, oh, well, I did assign it the value, but it's undefined because it's not part of the value. Okay, even though we did type it. But because enums are numbers, so it does recognize it as a number, but then it doesn't reflect any values in the array. Although if I did this, let's do 2. So let's run that. It should say female, because if we assigned it the value of 2. Oh, I didn't save it. That would be useful. And let me actually console log my tuple while I'm at it. Console.log my tuple. Okay, although we know it all went fine because if there was a problem, it would have thrown an error. Okay, so I don't necessarily have to console log everything because if there was a problem, it would tell me, which is again part of what's nice about this. I said I want it to be a number and a string. It's a number and a string. It passed the checks. So here we go. Let's run that. Again, now we're assigning 2, so we're assigning the number instead of the name. But either way, I got the same number in there, so I can assign it by the name or by the number, which allows me 2 ways to assign the same value. And then when I go back, it uses it as an index, and we can grab the title as well. So that's the benefit of enums. It allows you to assign a numerical value to a variable, either by using you can always still use a number, but allows you to give sort of a name. So that way you can create something that's going to be like a numerical switch for different parts of your code, but you can do it with sort of more semantic wording. So that way when someone reads your code, they're seeing the semanticness, which is good. We like semantic. More semantic, the better. Okay, and then the last thing is any, which we talked about in the last video. You can just type anything, any. Void just means it's not, generally you're going to use this for functions. If you've ever done like C#, C++, or anything like that, you might recognize void meaning that this function doesn't return a value. Because when we get the functions later on, you can also type your functions. So when you're defining a function, you need to specify what is that function returning. So that way it knows when it reads your function that at the end of your function that it returned the value that it expected. And again, so that allows us to check our functions to make sure that our functions are doing what we expect them to do. But what if your function doesn't return a value? It just console logs something and does nothing else. You would give it the type void. But if you want, basically, again, you can check to make sure that your function is returning a number per se by typing it number. So that way if it returns a string of 5 instead of the number 5, it would catch that as an error. And then you can go back and fix it instead of being confused after much further into your coding practices. So those are all the main basic types. So again, tuple, enum, your numbers, your booleans, your strings, all that fun stuff. There's also a never type, which is really more for like error handling. So basically, it's for something that should never get. If you are creating like an error handling function, that's kind of where you would use never type, because it's basically the idea is that it's not supposed to resolve, it's not supposed to finish, it's supposed to throw an exception before the function's up. So anything like that, you would throw the never. So basically, if that thing actually doesn't throw an exception or actually makes it to the end, that's a problem, and that'll give you an error saying, hey, this thing's not working the way you expect it to work. Yeah. So those are the types. I'll see you guys in the next video, and we'll talk more about TypeScript.